In our next video, video number 26, we are going to study about the foreign exchange rate. The foreign exchange can be learned under three headings. One, the foreign exchange currency. It means that the currency other than the domestic currency. Then foreign exchange market, which is otherwise known as the market in which national currencies are traded for one another. Here, the major participants are the commercial banks, foreign exchange brokers, or any other monetary authority. The market itself is worldwide. Then what is foreign exchange rate? It is the rate at which one currency can be converted into another. For example, we have the foreign exchange dollars, euros, pounds, and so on, for which they are rated differently in the market. $1 is rupees 70. Today the dollar is 76 rupees 84 paise. 1 euro costs 83 rupees 55 paise. 1 pound costs 95 rupees 84 paise. Therefore, the exchange rate expresses the ratio of exchange between the currencies of two countries. It is also called the external value of the domestic currency. Now there are two systems of exchange rate, broadly speaking. The fixed exchange rate system, in which the rate of the foreign exchange is fixed by the governments. Second, the flexible exchange rate or floating exchange rate, where the rate of foreign exchange is determined by the market forces of supply and demand. However, there is one more system of exchange rate which, without any formal international agreement, the world moves on to managed floating exchange rate, which is handled by the central bank or the RBI. Let's now learn the three systems of exchange rate one after the other. First, the fixed exchange rate system, otherwise called the Bretton Woods system of exchange rate. Now, under this fixed exchange rate system, the government fixes the exchange rate at a particular level. Either the government or the RBI fixes the exchange rate. The foreign exchange reserves or the official reserves are maintained and the officially determined exchange rate. So the exchange rate between two countries fixed at the government level is called the fixed exchange rate. Let us try to understand this with the help of a graph. This graph we plot the foreign exchange, or let us say the dollar, on the x-axis and the exchange rate of the domestic currency, that is rupees, on the y-axis. Now let us say the rate of exchange is at E. That means $1 is equal to 70 rupees. $1 is equal to rupees 70. That is the equilibrium point. When the government increases the exchange rate, it makes the domestic currency cheaper in terms of foreign currency. That means, let us say, it increases the rate from 70 to this point, let's say 75. Then this increase in the exchange rate is called as rupee devaluation. Because at this point we will be paying more in terms of rupees for $1. The devaluation of domestic currency is the reduction in the value of domestic currency with respect to a given foreign currency. Earlier we used to pay only 70 rupees. Now we pay 75 rupees for $1. So that is devaluation. Again, when the government decreases the foreign exchange rate, it makes the domestic currency costlier in terms of foreign currency. That means from 70, let us say it goes down to 65. This is called revaluation of domestic currency. Because now for $1, where we used to pay 70 rupees, now we pay only 65 rupees. So this is called revaluation because it makes the domestic currency costlier in terms of foreign currency. So for $1, now it is only 65 rupees. So that is how we understand this graph. Now we also see on this graph there is a demand curve and a supply curve. At the rate of interest equal to 70, when $1 is equal to 70 rupees, we find an equilibrium point. That is where demand and supply of foreign currency are equal. Now suppose the rate is increased to 75, that is when devaluation of rupee takes place. In that case, the supply is at this point and demand is at this point. So this triangle shows us an excess supply of the dollar. Excess supply of dollar. The demand is here for dollar and the supply of dollar is here, which is more than $1. So this is called as excess supply. On the other hand, when the rupee is revalued, that is when it drops from 70 to 65, in that case the demand is here and supply is at this point. So supply of dollar is less than 1 and demand for dollar is more than 1. So this triangle under point E is called as excess demand. Here it is called excess demand. Above E it is called excess supply. Now let us suppose that for some reason the government wants to encourage exports, for which it needs to make rupee cheaper for foreigners. So it would do so by fixing a higher exchange rate, that is 75 rupees per dollar from the current exchange rate of 70 rupees per dollar. Rupee becoming cheaper means that for $1 now they will be paying 75. That means we will get more money for $1. Thus, a new exchange rate will be set up by the government, which will be at this point, that is R1, which is greater than R. So R1 is greater than R. At this exchange rate, the supply of dollars exceeds the demand for dollars. The supply of dollars exceeds the demand for dollars. That is why this is excess supply. Supply is more than demand. Now what does the government do? The RBI intervenes to purchase the dollars for rupees in the foreign exchange market in order to absorb this excess supply which has been created. Thus, through intervention, the government can maintain any exchange rate in the economy. But in the bargain, it will be accumulating more and more foreign exchange so long as this intervention goes on. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if the government was to set an exchange rate at a lower rate, that is at R2, that means when $1 is equal to 65 rupees, there would be an excess demand, this is what we learned, for dollars in the foreign exchange market. Now to meet this excess demand, for dollars, the government would have to withdraw dollars from its past holdings. Now, if it fails to withdraw the past holdings of the dollars, a black market for dollars may come up. Now, let us look at the flexible exchange rate or the floating exchange rate. In this case, there is no intervention of the government, unlike the fixed exchange rate. The market forces, the demand and the supply, determine the rate of exchange. And there is no intervention of the central bank either. There will be no official reserve transaction. This shows that the RBI intervention is not there. Now, if you look at the graph, again we plot dollars on the x-axis and rupee on the y-axis. In a free market without the central bank intervention, the equilibrium exchange rate is determined by the market forces of demand and supply. So, the equilibrium exchange rate is the rate at which the market demand and supply of foreign exchange are equal. At this point, demand is equal to supply. Hence, this is the equilibrium exchange rate. The demand for foreign exchange implies an outflow of foreign exchange. That means more of the domestic currency moves out of the country. How does the currency move out of the country? When imports takes place. Imports means to buy goods and services from abroad. When you buy from abroad, you have to pay money to people outside the country. So there is an outflow of foreign exchange or rupee. Then when we make transfer payments, for example gifts and grants, if you are gifting somebody who is staying in America or Europe, then you have to pay in terms of rupees to those people living outside the country. So there is an outflow of foreign exchange. Similarly, when investments are made abroad, like the financial assets in shares and bonds, etc., then you have to invest abroad, and so the money moves out of the economy. Then tourism. When you want to visit a foreign country as a tourist, then the money goes out of the country. Also for the speculative purposes. Foreign exchange is demanded for possible gains from appreciation of foreign currency. Then this brings in a total debit in the balance of payments accounts. Since the currency moves out of the economy, it is a debit item. Hence, it brings in a total debit in the balance of payments accounts. Supply of foreign exchange implies inflow of foreign currency. That means where the foreign currency is moving into the economy, into the domestic economy. That means we earn more dollars in the country from outside. This happens when exports takes place. Exports means we are selling our goods and services abroad. When we sell something, we get foreign exchange. Then foreign investments in India. Foreign direct investment, portfolio investments are investments that are made by the foreign companies in our country. So this brings in the foreign currency. Foreign tourism. People coming from outside the country bring in foreign currency. So there is an inflow of foreign exchange. The other one is transfer payments or interest on loans from abroad. When you get gifts from somebody living outside the country, the foreign currency moves into the country. Or when you have given loan to somebody staying outside the economy, they pay interest, and so the foreign currency moves in. Then factor income from abroad. For a factor service done to people outside our country, we receive factor income. Hence there is an inflow of foreign exchange. Since these are inflow of foreign exchange and add to the balance of payments, They are the total credits in the balance of payments accounts. Now, the third system is managed floating exchange rate. This is without any formal international agreement. The whole world moves on to what can be best described as this managed floating exchange rate system. In the system, the exchange rate is determined by the combined forces of demand and supply of foreign exchange. So there is an intervention of government or the central bank or the RBI. A flexible exchange rate that can be influenced by RBI during extreme fluctuations. Since there is an intervention of the RBI in order to maintain the exchange rate, it is called managed floating exchange rate or dirty floating exchange rate. Now, this implies that the official reserves transactions will never be equal to zero. Why? Because RBI is intervening to manage or maintain the exchange rate. When the central bank realizes that the market value of domestic currency is heavily depreciating against a dollar, it would like to restore its value by selling the US dollars in the international money market. So by selling the dollars, the bank expects to increase the supply of dollars. This reduces the price of dollars. Then when the rupee rises or appreciates, the RBI intervenes and buys the dollars from the market. This would increase the demand for dollars. Therefore, the value of dollar increases. This activity encourages exports. Therefore, managed floating is a tool employed by the central bank to restore the value of country's currency in relation to other currencies within the desired limits, even when the exchange rate is determined by the market forces of demand and supply.